Discussing the roles of man and woman can be a very hot button topic in the modern evangelical church. You see, everyone, everyone has an opinion. And there are various factions within evangelicalism which take sides on the issues, whether it be complementarianism, egalitarianism, or something in between. The point is, many works have been written discussing these roles of man and woman, Ish and Isha. As we noted, Matthew 19, as we saw last lesson, the Pharisees, not surprisingly, even had a strong opinion. Does that surprise us? But as Jesus chided them, only one opinion truly matters about something's purpose, and that is God's opinion, Yahweh's opinion. In following Jesus' lead, a orthodox biblical theology on men and women must begin in Genesis 2. In Genesis 2, we see the original intent for a man and woman laid out. And it is from here, as Jesus points out, where we need to begin to asa, or form our theology. It's from here the apostles' doctrine develops on the issue. And it's from here that we likewise need to begin. As we jump in, we must remember from our previous lessons, lesson 4 in particular, that humanity was created for a purpose. When I say humanity, I mean male and female. Genesis 1 says, we were created in the image of God to be his image and icon, to rule. However, humanity as the image of God was more than just a statue. Humanity was a living, breathing, feeling, working representation of God, an image which has to continue God's creation mandate by spreading God's garden throughout the earth, his cosmic temple, his convergent space throughout all of creation. In order to fulfill this function, humanity would have to be Yahweh's priest. Adam would have to do the asa, the tohu wabohu. Humanity would have to be priests who would spread the Tov order, the good order throughout the rest of creation. Humanity was tasked with bringing order throughout creation as part of the stewardship given to them by God. This would mean that as priests, they would have to work against chaos and bring it into order. And it means that humanity would have to make the unclean, the unsacred, sacred, the unclean, or we could use the Jewish term, kosher. The idea presented in Genesis 1 is that when this work is complete, humanity, both male and female, will then rest and reign with God in his fashioned cosmic temple we would call Earth, the full convergent space. Furthermore, the act of God's image doing this brings him glory. It spreads his glory throughout all creation. That is what humanity was called to do. In Genesis 2, what we see theologically presented in scripture is Adam was the first man created to fulfill this purpose. He was the beginning of the program. He was created by God from the ground in which he was to work and eventually rule. He was elected by God, picked up, and put into God's convergent space, the place where our reality and God met. And Adam was tasked with these priestly duties to unite the two. Now, as we see from our narrative, this was an extraordinary task. And as the narrative points out, it is not tov or optimal for Adam to do it alone. Abraham Gravella states it like this: man, created to serve God in the temple of the cosmos, is to live in dependence upon the Creator and his presence, who provides for him whatever is good. In other words, man is dependent on God for providing him for what is optimal for him. Man needs God. Therefore, it is not optimal for man to be alone. As we discussed in lesson 4, community is essential. Community is necessary requirement to be good for man. It's optimal. Therefore, we see in this text that man has a need that only God can provide. And in this narrative, God provides an ezer for Adam. He provides help. This help, as we see in the text, given by God for man, comes in the form of woman, Isha. Now, let me be clear. This does not imply that the helper is weaker than the one being helped. We know this because God himself is described as a helper in Psalms. It implies a person who completes or helps one complete a duty, in this case being a priest. So we should not see the woman as lesser or in any way inferior to man. What we should notice, however, is that the helper is referred to as suitable. Wenham says this word used in scriptures to indicate complementary rather than identity or hierarchy. And this is very insightful because Matthew Henry says, woman was not made out of man's head to top him, not out of his feet to be trampled upon him, but out of his side to be equal with him. I think there's wisdom in that. You see, the narrative makes it clear that woman is a part of man. Together, they make a whole. It's a oneness. Man without woman is incompatible. If man without woman is incomplete. This is also expressed in the naming. Adam names her Isha because she comes from Ish, woman from man. In fact, the word for man, Ish, is not used in scripture until woman is created. Up until this point, man was referred to as Adam or Zakar, which is the Hebrew word for male. It's not until Adam names his new creation by God, woman, that Adam names himself man. He sees their need for each other and names them accordingly. They are complete. And thus, thrust again is man was created in such a way that he needs help. I think this theological principle is bigger than just sexual differences. Although physical differences are necessary for humanity to truly be fruitful and multiply physically. But I think it also shows by the use of the word helper that mankind will never be able to do anything alone. Hate to break it to you, but no man, no humanity, no man or woman is an island. Humanity cannot fulfill their destiny or purpose alone. Humanity, once again, was created for community, right, Cole? Created for community. Humanity needs each other for help. This theological principle presses on the past as well as man's need for help from God. Man, after the fall, as you can study out, will need supernatural help of God to fulfill their destiny and purpose. They need that Ezer. However, in returning to our starting notion of roles of man and woman, I think this text in chapter 3 show us that although they are similar and equal before God, there are different roles each of these sexes has within the kingdom. And we see here, and then again at the end of chapter 3, that Adam was a stewardship over naming. As he names the female here, woman, yet post-fall, he calls her Eve. Interestingly, his stewardship of naming was not necessarily just seen as responsibility of man, however. As we see in chapter 4 of Genesis, it is implied that Eve names Cain. There are several different ideas working in that text, however. So let's just say that that's another story. What we need to pull together as we end this lesson is we need to see that all this point, it would appear that man and woman are both to be seen and treated as priests. They both are responsible for priestly functions. Like Peter says in this epistle, in his epistle, we male and females, as followers of Christ, are nations of priests. And this priesthood was begun with Adam, both man and woman.